G'day everybody, this is George on the 17th of April. Let's change that again, 17th of May 2026. This is my version of a message of hope. Yes, you can see that a 29-year-old Queensland nurse had a problem. I'll explain. His grandfather booked to fly him to his wedding. 2023. The grandfather suffered a cardiac event, non-life-threatening, but serious enough that flying was off the table. So the nurse called Qantas to cancel the ticket. And of course, Qantas told him, yes, the fare was non-refundable unless the passenger had died. Can you guess what happened next? Now, I want to hold that moment for a bit because what happened next is the whole thing. Are you ready? He went online, you see, and found a live extinct form. Didn't even know that such thing exists. But as the story goes, he downloaded it and filled it in himself. Yeah, he invented a unique record number as well. Pretty clever. And forged a doctor's signature. And that's called, is that bravery? I'm not sure, but he's got guts. And yes, he used that to submit it to Qantas. And he got a happy result, got a $1,300 refund. It's a happy? Stay tuned. Because Queensland police were alerted. Criminal charges followed because there was forgery and uttering fraud involved. And of course, he had no choice. He pleaded guilty. And a 12-month good behaviour bond was served, including restitution to Qantas. But the sad thing is, his hospital job was gone. His professional registration, well, it's still before the tribunal, yet to be determined. Remember all of this, just for only $1,300. Now, there is one detail I want to plant here and come back to it later. So I'll say it. After all of it, which is the charges, the job, the tribunal, he turned himself into the regulator. I mean, he didn't have to, but he did it anyway. So I'll leave that for now. If you ever watched Seinfeld, and I reckon some of you are out there, you might remember an episode called The Implant. In that episode, George Costanza discovers bereavement affairs exist and fakes his girlfriend's aunt's death to get a cheaper flight. Of course he knows he's wrong. But that's his character. He just lies his way through. So he does it anyway and constructs magnificent justifications for why he's basically fine. Of course, the studio audience gets a laugh. And if you get a chance, watch the episode because it is quite funny. Really funny dialogue. So as we can see, the nurse got a tribunal hearing. Yeah. Now, less than 6 years ago, I walked into a store and bought a computer monitor. I found one that I thought was quite interesting and would be useful. Didn't have HDMI though, unfortunately. Anyway, I found another tag with a lower price tag. So I swapped them over. So I paid maybe about $79, I can't remember, instead of around $100. Okay? So it's $20 difference maybe, give or take. Now nobody stopped me because nobody saw it and nobody looked twice. Now, I walked out of the store with a monitor that cost me $20 less than it should have. And I was feeling that, hey, this is the part I'm not proud of. Completely fine about it. Yeah, not proud of it. I told myself the markup on the electronics was obscene anyway for an older technology monitor. And I told myself $20 was nothing to a retailer. All of it true enough to feel convincing. I lied to myself. But none of it is the actual point. Now, I remember on one occasion, a colleague of mine was telling about our team, about his sister's behavior. Listen to this. She had a system. What does that mean? Well, she'll go out shopping and buy an outfit, be it jeans, skirts, whatever she fancies. But it's something that she wanted for an event that she would wear just once and return it the next day and tell the store she didn't like it to get a refund. I remember there was a store called Giordano had that policy. If you don't like it, just refund it. Crazy, right? I don't see any Giordano stores anymore in Australia. Not in Melbourne anyway. Now, this colleague of mine shared this with an easy warmth of someone proud of a family achievement. Proud, really? I thought to myself, but I said nothing anyway, none of my business. And I sat there and said nothing. And I want to be honest about why, because it matters. It wasn't that I couldn't find the words. No, it was that I didn't want the awkwardness. Like I said, we're not brothers. We're not family. We're not even the same church. I didn't want to be the one in the room who made it weird. Didn't want to seem like I was auditioning for something. So I stayed quiet and told myself I'll be at least hold my own kids to a different standard. Because if I ever caught them doing that, my word, they would hear from me. They'll get an ear blast. Now that gap between the standard I enforce at home and the one I defend in public, that is not just hypocrisy, really, isn't it? That's the craving, getting comfortable, learning the shape of the furniture. And you know what? The Apostle Paul writes something to Timothy I want you to hear. We both will hear this. It's from 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. It's a famous verse. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. Notice what he didn't say. Yeah. He doesn't say money is the root of all kinds of evil. No, he didn't say that. But he names the love of it. And that's the key word, love of it. The craving. The thing that lives underneath the behavior and would write all the justification for the bad behavior. So what does that craving actually look like? Don't have an idea, it's like a cartoon version, not the Scrooge McDuck that Disney wants you to have thinking about. But it looks like a man at his laptop at midnight downloading a government form he has no business filling in to say his grandfather is dead. It looks like a price tag folded into a back pocket in an electronic aisle. No. It looks like jeans on a return rack that were never meant to come back. No. It is actually quiet, it rationalizes, and it somehow performs some sort of deception. And it is extraordinarily good at finding reasons why this particular situation is different from all the others, right? Well, the fare is non-refundable, but the grandfather genuinely can't fly. So that policy is unjust, isn't it? I'll let you decide that. The monitor markup was obscene. $20 is a rounding error to them. The store will resell the jeans. Who is actually being hurt here, really? Because the craving doesn't announce itself as dishonesty. It announces itself as fairness. And then Paul says, pierce themselves with many pangs. Right? The nurse's $1,300 refund is being repaid to Qantas. Well, his hospital job is gone. His name on a tribunal record for sure. And a criminal conviction sits in his history. He's only 29 years old. Yeah, 7 words, pierce themselves with many pangs. Now, I'm not here to condemn that man. Who am I, right? He was dealing with a serious illness at the time. That's been reported. It was the fact the tribunal has heard. And the craving found him in a corner, right? He was exhausted, sick, looking at a non-refundable ticket with a solution already loaded and waiting. Pay some compassion to the man. And that is the thing about the craving. It doesn't wait for your best day, does it? It waits for your worst day and it strikes. Oh, by the way, if you're finding this to be useful, do me a favor. Today is my last day of my personal goal. I'm up to 48 subscribers. I need 2 more. Will you be so kind to be one of the 2? I'll so appreciate it if you can help support this channel. Do subscribe, give it a like for this video, and share it far and wide with your family and friends. Now, last month, my local grocery store, there was a staff handover at the register mid-transaction, you see. They were changing shift by the looks of it. Now, the new cashier looked at the situation and assumed my goods had already been scanned and paid for. Well, they hadn't. I said, well, I haven't paid yet. And so that's the whole story. No moment of drama. No internal wrestling. See you later, yeah. Okay. 3 seconds at a checkout and a choice about who I want to be when nobody is watching, and the outcome is $20 either way. Now I tell you that because it's impressive. No, it isn't impressive. It's a joke. But it happened a month after I've been sitting with this topic. And I know exactly what I'm capable of when the craving has a quiet argument already prepared for me in my head. Hey, let me tell you, I was not a saint at the register. I didn't see myself that. I was just someone who had thought about this recently enough to recognize the fork when I reach it. My friends, I want to ask you something honestly. Where's the craving operating in your life right now? I'm not talking about the dramatic version nor the forged signature, but just the smaller version. You know, the return to a rack of clothes, the tag in the pocket, the quiet assumption at the checkout you didn't correct. Where is that? The place where your private standard and your public behavior are not quite the same thing, you see? Because the gap between that nurse and the rest of us is not a gap in character. It is a gap in stakes and circumstance and the particular moment that craving found us with a solution already ready. Yeah? Paul said it is through this craving that some have wandered away from faith. Not stormed away, but wandered away. Yep. And that is what the smaller version do. They don't take anywhere dramatic. No, they walk you step by step, quiet little steps, further, bit by bit, a little bit further from the person you actually intended to be. The monitor is in storage now in my place. I don't use it anymore, but I know what I paid for. And I know what I actually own. So that's a pang. That is what the craving costs, even when it gets away clean. Of course, now the detail that I planned at the start, the nurse self-reported, and after the charges, the job, the tribunal, he walked into the regulator's office and told him what he'd done. Yeah, he had already been caught, right? He already pleaded guilty. He didn't have to go further. He just went anyway. Now, I don't know what moved him to do it. Maybe his guilt, some sort of confession, but I think about it. Because that is a man who looked at the distance between who he had been and who he wanted to be and decided to start closing it. He didn't do it privately, not cheaply, not in the way that cost nothing. Yes. So he closed it in the only direction that was still open to him. My friends, your moment has not closed yet, and that is not a small thing. Guys, thanks for being with me today. I really appreciate it. Help me smash that goal, 50 subscribers by the end of today's Sunday. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.